If you're looking for a do-everything router, one with both a fixed and a plunge base, the ability to accommodate both 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch shank router bits, and at least 2 horsepower, then you're probably looking at one of these 3 routers right here, because these 3 are the top 3 selling routers in that category. And today we're going to find out which one's best with the good old-fashioned competition. We're going to have a fairly detailed comparison of these 3 routers, and we're going to award points along the way. We might even actually take away some points too. And at the end, whichever one has the most points wins. That's it. So how it's going to work is, since these routers all have a fair amount of similarities, when one router has kind of a standout feature or something that the other ones don't have, it'll get a point for that. If one router doesn't have something that's good that the other 2 do have, then they'll lose a point. And full disclosure, I haven't gone through ahead of time and awarded points. I'm actually pretty curious as to which one's gonna win. I don't know, which one do you think's gonna win? Also of note, I purchased all these with my own money and used them all in various projects. Actually, that's not true. I did purchase the Dewalt and the Skil, but the Bosch I borrowed from my dad, but that was a few years ago and it's been in my shop ever since. So there's probably some kind of common law marriage or squatters' rights or some kind of law in the books that says that this is actually officially mine now. So, I don't know. I'm not a lawyer. Anyway, let's get started. Okay, so we're gonna start with the motors. So let's just take these out of their bases here. Okay, like I mentioned, all 3 of these routers are over 2 horsepower and can accommodate both 1/4 inch and 1/2 inch shank router bits. But the way you change the router bit is different on all 3. And here's where I think we'll see our first point awarded. The Skil, you have this spindle lock button that you push, and then you use a wrench to loosen or tighten the collet. With the Bosch, you don't have a spindle lock button. You use a 2 wrench method basically. There's 2 flat sides on the spindle where you put 1 wrench, and then you put the second wrench on the collet, and you twist them in opposite directions to tighten or loosen the collet. With the Dewalt, it gives you the option of doing both. You can either use the spindle lock button here, just similar to the Skil, or the spindle actually has flat sides on it, like the Bosch, where you can use a 2 wrench method if you like. So it gives you a little bit more options, whereas with the Skil, you can only use the spindle lock button, and the Bosch, you have to use 2 wrenches. But the Dewalt, you can use either. So I think that's worthy of a point. And where are we gonna put those points? Where are we gonna keep track of these? I don't know, maybe we'll put them here. Yeah, let's put them over here. So it looks like Dewalt's in the lead. And like I mentioned, these all have over 2 horsepower. The Dewalt and the Bosch both have 2 1/4 horsepower or 12 amps power. The Skil, on the other hand, has 14 amps and 2 1/2 horsepower. And since we'd all like to have more power, I think that's worthy of a point. Also, while we're on the Skil, I think worthy of another point is the Skil is the only one of the 3 with LED lights. It has 3 LED lights here, and they don't come on when you plug it in, but they do come on when you power up the router. So that's a nice little feature that the other 2 routers don't have. To power on these units, they each have on-off switches. Both the Skil and the Dewalt switch is the same as a little toggle switch here. And it says on there on-off and has the line and circle for both the Dewalt and the Skil. However, the Bosch simply just has the circle and the line. It doesn't say the words on-off on there. So that's a small thing. I don't think it's worthy of a point, but I do like the switches better on both the Dewalt and the Skil. And while we're talking about powering these things on, here at the top on the Bosch is where you have your dial to adjust the power. The same thing on the Dewalt. There's a dial here, and both of them go from 1 to 6. Both the Bosch and the Dewalt start at 8,000 RPM, and the Dewalt goes up to 24, and the Bosch goes up to 25,000, while the Skil starts at 10,000 and goes up to 25,000. And with the RPM ranges being so similar, no points awarded there. So let's talk about the cords a little bit. So the Skil has the shortest cord of the 3 at 6 feet long. The Bosch has the longest cord of the 3 at 10 feet long, and the Dewalt splits the difference at 8 feet. And one thing you'll notice about the Dewalt is that there is no cord in there now. It's not because this is cordless, it's because the cord is removable. That's the spot where the cord goes. You may like this or not. I happen to think it's a plus. I think it's worthy of a point, so we'll go ahead and give one now. The reason why the cord is removable is because this router can also be used with a third base that they have in addition to the fixed and the plunge base. It's called the D-handle base. And in that base, you can power it on the base. And so the power plug goes into the base, and the base then plugs into the router. And as a side note, this unit can be purchased with just the fixed base, just the plunge base, the plunge and the fixed base, or all three bases. So whatever configuration that you prefer, you can get it that way. You can also buy each base separately if you like. Now I talked about how you adjust the speed on both the Bosch and the Dewalt with these dials here, but the most unique feature between all three of these routers is the way you adjust the speed on the Skil. Let me go ahead and stick it in a base and show you what I mean. Okay, so the Skil is pretty unique in that it has this LCD screen on here that you use to adjust the speed of the router. There's two ways you can do it. There's one where you can just hit the plus and minus button to go up and down. That way would be similar to just turning the dial on either of these two routers. But if you don't know what speed that you want your router to be spinning at, let's say that you have a bit that's bigger than a standard size bit and you're not sure what speed that you should be operating your router at while using that bit, Skil makes the process of determining that speed a lot simpler. The first thing you set is the type of bit you're going to be using. Then you set the size of that bit. Then you set the type of material you're going to be cutting. So hardwood, softwood, or plastic. And once you do that, you hit set, and it tells you what speed to run the router. Or this is the speed it's going to run the router at once you turn it on. If you want to adjust that, just simply hit the plus or minus, and you can do that. So obviously you're not stuck at that speed. You can still adjust it if you think that the speed that they gave you is too fast or too slow. But if you're looking for a good starting point or a baseline, I think this thing is awesome. And obviously definitely worth another point. I think that's it for the motors. And as of right now, it looks like the Bosch has a little bit of catching up to do. But let's move on to the fixed bases. Oh, actually, you know what? One other thing. All three of these motors have soft start. So obviously, no points awarded there since they all have the feature, but that's a good thing to know. Although I don't know that any routers sold today come without a soft start motor, but I mean, it's good to know they have them. All right, let's move on to the bases. All right, and now to the fixed bases. And like I said earlier, these routers are all somewhat similar, but they definitely do have some individual features that make them each their own little special snowflakes. So that's what we're going to go over here now, starting with both the, starting with the Skil, but I want to make a comment that the Skil and the Bosch router have the most similarities in their fixed base when compared to the Dewalt. So first we'll start with the Skil because, well, it's in the middle. So with the Skil, in order to get the router in, you just basically line up the arrow with that arrow. It slides in. And then these little notches on here are where the macro adjustments are. So you push this button to slide from one notch to the other. And in order to make micro adjustments after that, you turn this knob right here. And this knob, one full turn of this knob equals 1/16 of an inch. So that's the type of micro adjustment that you get from turning this knob. And then once you get to where you want it to be, fasten that down, and it doesn't move after that. So once you fasten this down, it's locked in. So a few other things you'll notice about this base are you have these slots here in the front, which is where the rods for the edge guide go. You also have a clear bottom, and the handles are elongated, kind of rubberized handles. They're made in this shape for ergonomic purposes, and they actually do feel good in the hands, but not in every riding position, which I'll talk about more here in a minute. But all the little features on this one, nothing too unique, so no points this time for the Skil. But let's move over to the Bosch. Like I said a minute ago, with the Bosch, it adjusts pretty similarly to the Skil, but I'll go through it here really quickly. So to get the router in, you have to run it along this track. So you put it in first, and then you have to twist it, and then it goes the rest of the way in. So just line up these arrows. Now that arrow is right there. Goes in slightly, then twist, goes the rest of the way in. So that loud noise you heard was it engaging in that first lock. And to make further macro adjustments, just like the Skil, you just depress this here, and it goes down to the next one and snaps into place. And again, like the Skil, to make the micro adjustments, the fine adjustments, you turn this knob right here to make your fine adjustments. And one full turn to this also is 1/16 of an inch. And as you see here, the Bosch also has slots for the rods of an edge guide. The bottom is black instead of clear, but I don't see that as a really big issue. The hole is big enough to see through, and I don't find that it gets in the way of anything that I'm working on. So I won't take away any points for that. But one thing of notice, probably the biggest thing to notice between all these three, the biggest difference is going to be these handles. To be honest, when I first saw the handles, I thought it was kind of gimmicky. Didn't know it was a marketing thing. I mean, at this point, I guess it kind of is. How you know the Bosch fixed router is by these handles. But they actually are pretty functional. Like I said, I do like the way these rubberized handles feel on the Skil router because, like I said, it feels good in the hands when you're routing in a low position. But the Bosch router, you can route in a low position, it feels good. And if you're standing up higher, looking over, and your elbows are higher, it still feels good in your hands because the handles are round. Whereas with both the Skil and the Dewalt have handles like this. But with these handles, they feel good in your hands when your elbows are low. But if you're up higher and you're routing like this, it just doesn't feel as good. This part comes to a point, and that's where your palms go, and it just doesn't feel as good. So while I do like the way these oblong shaped handles feel when you're routing from a low position, I find that the Bosch handles are more versatile routing from any position basically. So for that, I'm gonna give a point to these Bosch handles because basically just for their versatility. I mean, it's subjective whether you like the way they look or not. I think it's kind of weird, but I kind of like it. So, all right, let's move on to the Dewalt. And before I get into the base of the Dewalt, the fixed base of the Dewalt, take a look at these different heights. All three of the routers are at their lowest position, and the Dewalt is much more compact than both the Bosch and the Skil. I'm debating over whether that's worth a point because maybe it's kind of subjective, but I really like it. Actually, you know what? Nobody says,
hey, I want a big router. I want my router to be as big as possible.
Compact is a good thing. So I'm going to go ahead and give that a point, especially since the compactness of it doesn't affect its power. It's still got the same amount of power as the Bosch at 2¼ horsepower. So I'm going to give it a point for its compact shape. Okay, so onto the base. The adjustment mechanism of the Dewalt router is probably the biggest differentiator between this one and the other two. And it works just like their smaller compact router, if you're familiar with that one. And the way it works is there is no macro adjustment and micro adjustments. It's all adjusted by this ring on the back. You twist that, it goes up. You twist it the other way, it goes down. Simple as that. And if you want to know how far up or down you're moving the router, there's markings on the ring every 64th of an inch, and one full turn of the ring equals 1 inch. And I really want to give the Dewalt a point for this adjustment mechanism, but it has a couple of problems. One is that it takes a really long time to travel a large distance because there's no macro adjustment like the other two have. If you want to travel a large distance, you have to just keep on turning it until you get there. So that takes a little bit longer. It's kind of crude in its sound as you adjust it downward. You hear that? So that's not that nice. Also, and the other thing is, when you want to change the base from the fixed base to the plunge base, when you take the motor out, the ring is on the motor, and you can't fit the motor into the plunge base with this ring on. So then you've got to take the ring out, and then don't forget, got to put it in there so you don't lose it somewhere, and then take the motor and put it into the plunge base. So for those reasons, if I were to give it a point for the adjustment mechanism, because I do like that, I would then have to take it away for the inconveniences of the same adjustment mechanism. So, Sorry, Dewalt. And while we're looking at the base here real quick before we move on to the plunge bases, you'll see the same thing as with the other fixed bases, that you have slots here for an edge guide, and the bottom is clear, and the handles are similar to the Skil, although they're a little bit bigger, but the same shape and same ergonomics. So with that, let's move on to the plunge bases and set these fixed bases aside and make sure we don't lose this ring. All right, on to the plunge bases, but first we have a point deduction. The Dewalt, I earlier gave it a point for being more compact than the other routers, but when you look at all three of these routers in their lowest position, the Dewalt with this dust collection snorkel sticking out of the top is actually the tallest router now. So the point I gave earlier for it being the most compact has been taken away. And while we're on the subject of taking away points from Dewalt, let's take away another one. This speed adjustment on the Dewalt router is right here up against, I don't know why they did it this way. It's right here up against the column for the dust collection. And it's just, I mean, you can adjust it, but it's real cumbersome. It just doesn't make sense why they chose to do it that way. So we'll take away a point for that. That's just, I don't know, it's kind of ridiculous, actually. And while we're on the subject of dust collection, the Dewalt does have something a little bit more innovative with the dust collection running up the side. It makes it, at the very least, so it's not in your way while you're routing, so you can still see your workpiece. You don't have to worry about the dust collection hose like being in your way or what have you. I don't tend to use dust collection too much on routers because I don't find them to be too terribly effective. Especially depending on what kind of cut you're making. Sometimes they're not effective at all. They just get in the way. So I typically just tend to not use them at all, and I just clean up when I'm done. So I would like to give this credit for being innovative, but the fact that it's in the way of the speed adjustment, I can't give it a point for that. So, but it is different than the other two. All right, so moving on to the plunge mechanism. The plunge mechanism works in a manner where you unlock it by flipping it up, get to the position you want to be, lock it back down, and you're good to go. That's the same way as the Skil router. The Bosch is a little bit different. I actually like the Bosch a little bit better, and I'll show you that in a minute. But one of the interesting things about the Dewalt is that, like I said, I like the Bosch one better, but the Dewalt, if you look at their plunge base for their compact router, it has the mechanism similar to the Bosch. And on top of that, if you look at their compact router, which, like I said, had the same adjustment ring on that this one does on the fixed base, on the compact router plunge base, it has room where you can keep the ring on there. So I feel like that's a real miss for Dewalt. One, not putting the more preferred lever style on, and also not making the plunge base compatible to be able to keep the ring on. The same ring that you have to use on the fixed base, being able to keep that on the router motor. I don't know why they didn't do that, but they did it on the compact one. They didn't do it on this one. Not sure why, but I think that's a missed opportunity for them. But the turret stops, now all three of these brands have different turret stop functions. The Dewalt has 1/4 inch increments on each step. But then it also has this adjustable step. Neither of the other two routers have the adjustable step. So we're gonna give Dewalt a point for that. The only other thing to mention about this base is that, and all three of the bases have this, so I'll just kind of go through it quickly. It has a adjustment rod here with micro adjustment at the bottom and a scale at the top, which I never use that scale. I usually use referential measurement when I'm doing my depth stop. So, but if you do use it, they do have it on all three of the models. So with the Skil plunge base, the adjustment mechanism works the same way as the one on the Dewalt, where you flip it up to unlock it, get it to the position you want it to be in, press it back down to lock it in place. So same as the Dewalt, no points there. With the depth stop, it has 1/4 inch steps, so nothing special there, no extra points for that. It also doesn't have any kind of an adjustment step like the Dewalt does. And like I said, this one also has a rod with micro adjustments and a scale on the side. But one thing that Skil does have, which I haven't seen before, and to be honest, I don't know why I would need this, but right here it has a rod where you can set a stop for it going up. So if you were plunged down at its max depth, for example, you just turn this rod here, and as you turn, this little stop here lowers. And when you get to a height that you want, this piece right here will run into this stop and keep it from going all the way up. Like that. So, like I said, I don't know a situation where I need that. If you guys know, please leave it in the comments, because I'd really like to know. I'm not sure why they put that on there, but in case it is useful, I'll go ahead and give them a point for it. All right, onto the Bosch. And the Bosch's plunging mechanism to start works a little bit differently than the other two, and in my opinion is better, where instead of having to unlock, move your plunge to your plunge depth, and then lock back, this you just hold it, get to where you go, and let go. So it's not a huge deal, but I think it's more intuitive, easier, less steps really, and I think it's just overall better. So I'm going to give a point for that. Another thing about the Bosch that's different than the other two are these handholds, which is kind of funny because you contrast them to the fixed base. Bosch's are kind of all over the place with their handholds, where the Dewalt and the Skil both have the same ones on both the fixed and the plunge base. The Bosch has different handholds than both of them and different than the other base, if that makes sense. So I don't know what they're doing over there at Bosch. I don't know if they just have a staff of people that their only job is to come up with handhold ideas, but I don't know. I like these. They're super ergonomic. They're great for the low position. Also, just like the other ones, which is weird because they're nothing like the fixed base handholds, but if you're in a high position, you can slide your hands up and they're still really good to use. So Bosch gets another point for the handholds on this plunge base. And Bosch is really actually kind of racking up the points here because I'm going to give another one for their turret stops. Each of these have different turret stops. Like I said, the Dewalt had 1/4 inch with one adjustable. The Skil just had 1/4 inch with nothing adjustable. The Bosch, though, has 1/8 inch steps, which I think is superior to 1/4 inch. So I'm going to give another point for those. They don't have the adjustable stop, but with the 1/8 inch stops, I think that's plenty of fine tuning, I guess, just on the stops themselves. And just from a feel standpoint, the Bosch has the smoothest travel on its plunge mechanism. The Dewalt has no kind of coverings on its rod, so maybe that has something to do with it. And the Skil, while it does have coverings like the Bosch, it's still not as smooth, but that may have something to do with the price point and you know, you have to cut some corners somewhere. And so while we're on the subject of price, I don't know if it's kind of the elephant in the room or not, but the Bosch and the Dewalt cost significantly more than the Skil. The Skil MSRP is around $150, while these two are $250. But with all three brands, you can generally find them cheaper than that MSRP value. And while we're talking about value, what kind of extras do you get when you do purchase one of these? With the Skil, it comes with an edge guide included. The Bosch and the Dewalt do not, but both of these have optional edge guides you can purchase made by the manufacturer. So Bosch has an edge guide that you can purchase, and so does Dewalt. And both of their edge guides are better than the one that's included with the Skil, but of course you have to purchase it. But one thing to note is that if you choose to purchase either the Bosch or the Dewalt, and you want to purchase an edge guide, but let's say you purchase the Bosch and you like the Dewalt edge guide better, they both fit with each other. So I have both edge guides and they'll fit interchangeably. I tried it out. The Bosch and the Dewalts don't fit on the Skil. So if you were like,
I want to upgrade the edge guide that comes with the Skil and buy either the Bosch or the Dewalt,
it's not going to fit. So what do you get with the Bosch? It actually comes with a nice hard case. It'll fit, of course, the motor along with the two bases. It'll also fit some other things that might go along with your router. It has places for some bits and some other accessories. So what do you get with the DeWalt? You get a canvas bag. I mean, that's something, right? I mean, other than that, nothing. You don't get anything else. So with the extras that you get from each router, I won't take or give any points for that because even with the canvas bag not being anything significant, at least you do get something to carry it with if you wanted to use your router outside of your shop. So that is a plus. However, if you wanted to get the D handle base as well, that does come with a hard case. So if you get the kit with all 3 of those bases, you'll get a hard case similar to the one that you can get with the Bosch. So while I'm not taking away any points or giving any points for the extras that you get, I will give Skil a point for the pure cost of the router. At $100 less MSRP than the other 2, that's like 40% less. I mean, that's huge. So if you're looking to either build a tool collection or you just want to save money, I mean, that's a big deal, $100. All right, pencils down. Let's tally up the points and see what we got. So it looks like Skil. I was not expecting that, but I guess numbers don't lie. Now this was fun picking a winner today, and you know, at the risk of sounding too participation ribbonish, I really think all 3 of these routers are great. I mean, you'll win no matter which one you decide to choose. With a few caveats. I think the Skil is a great router if you're looking to either start a tool collection or money is a big factor. The fact that this is $100 less, I mean, you can't beat that. The only caveat I would have with the Skil is that if you want to put it primarily in a router table, just know that the adjustment is going to be a little bit annoying if and when you want to adjust the speed. And with the Bosch, if your primary use for this router is going to be the plunge base, I think Bosch has far and away the best plunge base out of the 3, so you definitely can't go wrong there. It'll also be great in a router table. With the Dewalt, I really do like the fixed base adjustment function, even though I hate that you have to take the ring off when you switch it to the plunge base. So if you are doing primarily fixed base operations, the Dewalt would be great. It'd also be great if you want that D handle base, because you can get the kit that includes that base as well, whereas the other 2 don't. And the Dewalt's the only one with a removable cord if like storage is an issue with you. So all 3 of these are great options depending on what your needs are. If I missed anything, let me know in the comments. All right, I'll take it easy.